Well, it seems scandal after scandal have almost brought the South African rail agency, passenger rail agency, to a complete standstill. In the final part of the state capture inquiry report, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo last week recommended a separate commission of inquiry to look into PRASA. He also said President Ramaphosa had failed to assist with solving the crisis at the state-owned entity. But as executives fail to take accountability, it's the people on the ground who are really suffering. For more, let's speak to Heidi Giokos here in Johannesburg and Nobusutu Hijana, who comes to us live from Cape Town. Good evening to both of you. Heidi, I'm going to start with you. I know you visited a number of stations in Soweto. What is the situation with the Metro Rail, which used to be such a crucial, affordable way of getting around? Are they functioning?
They are not functioning, Sally. What we do know is that, for example, Kliptown and a number of other train stations in Soweto, where thousands used to rely on these train services, are not operating. I was completely horrified to see the state of Kliptown train station. And what we know with regards to that specific train station is that it was up and functioning just before a lockdown in 2020. And it seems as though because of lockdown, services were suspended. And we know that a number of security guards were also, they didn't deploy as many security guards at the train station. There was complete vandalism and theft at that particular train station, and we were told that it just got worse and worse and worse. Sally, bricks were missing. Actual bricks. We're not even talking about the steel infrastructure and the cables and the railway lines. Actual bricks were taken and stolen, completely destroyed. There's nothing left there. The grass is extremely long. It's not being kept or maintained at all. We know that currently PRASA is undertaking a rehabilitation program that's going to include Kliptown rail station and also Naledi and a number of other rail stations within Soweto. But we then moved on to Naledi train station, and completely different. There are a lot more security guards there, and I think because they are trying to stop it and prevent what happened at Kliptown train station to happen at Naledi. We know it's currently in her rehabilitation stage. This is what PRASA is calling it, and train services will only be up and running in September. So it's shocking. People don't have train services to rely on. So, you know, just seeing that state is really heartbreaking.
And this is it. I mean, it's not only shocking to see the state of the infrastructure and how much it's going to cost to repair, but people who are already finding times really tough financially can't make use of the most cost-effective mode of transport. What is the community saying to you?
The community is really upset. They have indicated that they've asked PRASA, they've asked government, they've asked the Minister of Transport to include them in the rehabilitation and the development of these rail stations, train stations, and they have just been ignored. We were speaking to a number of community members today where they said, my father, my mother used to use this train to get to work. There was one particular community member that said, hearing the sound of a train in Soweto, one relates to it because we could always hear the train in Soweto because there are a number of train stations and services. That is not happening anymore. It's heartbreaking to see, and the community saying that so many people are so desperate to have train services in Soweto because the cost of living has gone up. It's very expensive to constantly use taxis, buses. They also become unreliable sometimes. Train services were a lot easier, but that's not the case now. Let's listen to what a number of community members told us.
This whole area is actually a hub for criminals because the whole station has been vandalized, and the sad reality is that kids get lost here, kids play here, and the community is using the bridge of the train station to go from one end to another.
I'm asking myself, how could really our government collapse, allow this thing to collapse? I mean, look, to allow this thing to collapse without giving security or anything. I mean, this clearly shows you that they failed. We don't have government. The government will only work to we and you, the poor ones, those who are rich or something. Everything for them is good.
I think it's going to cost a lot of money, and sometimes you think this vandalism is been orchestrated by them to get tenders so that they could rebuild the stations. So we don't understand. This is going to cost the taxpayers money, and that taxpayers money could have been utilized much better than rebuilding the stations again.
We've been fighting fighting a lot here about cable theft and such. No one was even helping us. We as community, nothing is going to change here until the government involves the community. If they are not going to involve the community, nothing is going to change. They are still going to be corrupt. They are still going to be corrupt. They are still going to chow the money. Nothing is going to change until they involve the community.
I mean, it's shocking, Heidi, just to see the grass growing, kids playing on the railway, and it's really safe because, of course, there's no trains coming. Hopefully, by September, we will see some movement. Thank you very much for that update from Soweto. Let's bring in Nobusutu. And Nobusutu, you're in Cape Town, and we've done a number of stories on just how difficult it is to get that central line going. Some bits are working, some are not. Just give us the picture and talk to me about how frustrated people are in Cape Town.
So, Sally, this morning we visited 2 stations in Cape Town. First, it was Bishop Lavis, where we spoke to 2 commuters. One was a 60-year-old man who stays just across the Bishop Lavis Town train station. He says he's been using that facility for over 50 years. And for him, it's been very convenient, as he has never actually had to spend much money on transportation. But obviously in 2020, during the lockdown period, there were a number of vandalism in the area where it forced that line to be closed, which is part of the central line. But when we spoke to another resident, he was basically complaining about the lack of security provided by also Prasa Securities. In fact, when we were there were actually kids swinging on those cables, and many of what Western Cape people call people who do scuttle work, those are the people that collect items and take them to scrap yards. They're actually residing in one of those facilities or the structures, so they've actually turned them into their homes. So residents are now saying that much attention should be paid when it comes to security, and want those who are placed there, such as the Prasa security personnel, to actually do much work in ensuring that those infrastructure is safeguarded.
All right, let's take a listen to a commuter that you spoke to.
Yeah, with the security are useless. They sit here in the offices. The vandalism is going on throughout the day. As people, we must just watch and see. Police, they are just coming and going. So what? I don't know.
All right, so he says security is useless. We know that the City of Cape Town, it's part of that white paper plan to actually take more control and get the trains up and running, so it falls under the city. But you've also spoken to the Transport and Allied Workers Union, SATAWU. Do they have any suggestions? Did you get a sense of what the plan is to get the railways going again in the city?
So with the 7.5 billion that has been awarded to Prasa, especially for the contracts, and ensuring that over 400 stations across the country do get refurbished, and ensuring that services are brought back to the people, they were saying that they do welcome that contract, but they want it to be monitored and ensuring that there aren't any corruption activities. So they're saying that they must work fast in ensuring that they fast-track the work so that the services should be brought back. But we know that the City of Cape Town that has been given the right to do some research in how they plan to change the railway system. But at this stage, it has not yet been passed, as they are part of the research team. But let's take a listen to what SATAWU says with regards to some of the work and priorities that they want Prasa for now to look at.
Right. So we don't actually have that bite, Nobusutu, but could you tell us a little bit more about what commuters are being told about when they can expect a reliable train service to get them in and out of work?
So the Minister of Transport, Mr. Fikile Mbalula, when he was here in Cape Town, he did make promises that by July, end of July, people in the Central Line, way from Langa, Bontierville, Khayelitsha and Philippi, should expect those services. But when we were there, Sally, it was a different picture, because most of those cables are not connected and the stations are not in a position where people can start or the services should resume. So much of the concerns from the people is that the minister does visit the city of Cape Town, make promises, but they're not seeing some of the changes because there are still people who are still residing on those railway tracks, and they have been promised that they'll be moved. But at this stage, we have not seen any movement, as we're still waiting to see what exactly will be done end of July.
All right, so it's end of July in Cape Town, sometime in September for Soweto. Let's hope so. Thank you very much, Nobusudu Hijana in Cape Town. Heidi Giokos here in Johannesburg, talking about the state of our passenger rail system.